All right, everybody, welcome to the Millionaire Attorney Marketing Podcast. My name is Randy Briggs, your host at leadsgrow.io. I have with us today Mr. James Grant out of Atlanta, Georgia. James, you're our second guest, so welcome. And why don't we start with a little bit about, who you are, what you do currently, and what your business is doing at the moment.
Randy, thanks for having me on. I'm coming to you from my home gym basement office down in my house. And, we're really excited to be here today because I want to talk a little bit about the legal side of things, but probably more about the business side of things, because that's one of the things that's probably differentiating us from a lot of other attorneys and law firms out there. Because at the end of the day, I'm a personal injury attorney. Our tagline is we're car accident attorneys that repair shattered lives and maximize recovery. But there's so much more to just practicing law, but to running a business that just so happens to practice law.
So you're in Atlanta, you do personal injury, and you guys are doing over $1 million. How long have you been doing that?
Yeah, so we started business in 2015, and we were probably myself, my business partner, Mark, we were just two idiots. Like, we had no plan. We had no clients, no nothing. We started with nothing, just hanging out in his basement, and we built it to a firm where now we're at a $2.5 million run rate for the year.
You said two idiots starting a firm. Is any business any different? Like, we all start, I think, really green. So when did you know you wanted to get into law? Like, take us back to the beginning. Like, what got you into this business in the first place?
Well, that's a story, because everyone asks me when they find out my background, they're like, why are you here and how did you get here? Because
yeah.
I'm an engineer by training. I went to Georgia Tech and I was a civil engineer. And probably, I think it was my second to last semester of law, or second semester of undergrad, I was like, hey, let's try law school. This will be fun. And it was just like on a whim and an idea, because I thought that, hey, I can be an engineer, I can be an attorney, maybe I could work for EPA, and those two things will work together. And that's how it started, but that's not how it ended. And I got here.
That's so funny. I have a similar story about that. So you just there's no grand master plan. You just said, hey, why don't we try out, law? And you figured engineer plus law, go work for EPA. And okay, well, that's not bad thinking. Honestly, that's a pretty good strategy, but it didn't work out that way. So what happened next?
Yeah. So I went to law school, and in your second year of law school, you're able to start interning. And I got an internship at the district attorney's office. And in my third year, you're able to, when you're supervised by another attorney, start practicing law effectively. And so I got to try a couple cases, and that is so much fun. You get to act like a peacock, and you get to literally act and play a role and try to sell people on your proposition. So I was like, oh yeah, this is way more fun. I want to make sure that I'm in the courtroom somewhere or the other. And so the EPA just went out the window.
So you got to intern for the DA, you did some trial, you got hooked on, I'll call it the game, or for love of the craft. Have you read Jerry Spence's book, How to Win Your Case?
I have not.
Yeah, he talks about that experience and how it's, as a side note, I found it to be a fascinating book. I've obviously never been in trial as an attorney, and it seems really fun to me. So you did that, and then what happened next?
So, after that, I graduated law school, came back home, studied for the bar, passed the bar first time out. And then it's just about, you got to find a job. It's cool to have a bar license and be an attorney, but you got to start work. So I went with what I knew. I had already had an internship at the district attorney's office. So I started working for the solicitor's office of Gwinnett County, which Georgia's a little weird how they do things. The district attorney, they handle felonies. And the big cases, the Solicitor General's office, they handle misdemeanors. I worked for the Solicitor General's office, and I had a ton of trials. I probably tried 18 cases in 18 months, which is probably more than most attorneys try in their lifetime. So I got a ton of trial experience out the gate. But then it's a matter of, it's okay, but it's time to go private practice. So that's where I went to a small firm that did what I call door law, meaning if you walked in the door and you had a case or you had cash, they were going to take the case. So, it was a little bit of a, scattershot, getting exposed to anything and everything. But 2 weeks before I started at that firm in October of 2013, my business partner, Mark Kirchen, started at the firm as well. And 3 months in, we kind of looked at each other and we're like, we get along pretty well. We could probably do this ourselves. And that's where we started planning. We started saving, we started planning, putting things together. And then December of 2014, we turned in our notice And January of 2015, we opened the doors of Georgia Trial Attorneys, and we haven't looked back since.
That's awesome. That's such a cool story that you guys' partnership was like, hey, we get along pretty well. We can do this. Why don't we just do it for ourselves? Right. Like so 18 trials in 18 months. Do you feel like you got, because so much of competence comes from volume, like doing your reps. Do you feel like that was your like training ground and set the foundation for you?
Oh yeah. I mean, you can, spend so much on one case, and it's just one case. It's just one trial. It's just one opportunity. And so like I said, where you really hone your craft is in volume. And that's kind of been a, process that we've followed throughout our careers. When it's come to our business, we're car accident attorneys, and there's a lot of car accident attorneys and car accidents in Georgia, regardless. Yeah. So how do you differentiate yourself? And we found that, number one, we can litigate everybody else's cases because nobody else likes doing it. So we litigate probably 15 other law firms' cases across the Southeast. They send their litigation stuff to us, and we do it. So that gives us a large volume in addition to the cases that we bring on ourselves. So we have a high volume of cases. We've got a lot of attorneys. We've got a lot of staff, a lot of processes to where we can handle a lot, which exposes us to a lot. So that way we've already made a lot of mistakes. In the 7 or 8 years we've been in business, we've already seen a lot. So we've improved on a lot. So that way it makes it easier and standardized. So that way it's just not a one-off.
Let's zoom in on that for a second, because, the next thing I want to ask is like, what are some of these lessons you've learned along the way? And I always say, one of the things I always say is that speed of success is your speed of failure. Like how quickly you can get in there and take a hit in the ring will give you the information you need to correct the mistake to prevent it in the future. So you want to succeed faster, get in there and fail faster. But what are some lessons you guys learned over these 7 to 8 years that you maybe would like to pass along to anyone else listening?
Oh man, there's so many, but like you said, speed is so huge. You've just got to do it. You can never wait for perfection. If you wait for perfection, you're never going to do it. So you've got to get in there. You've got to try. You've got to fail, and not even really see it as failure, but see it as an opportunity. With every challenge, with every difficulty, with every quote unquote failure, if you look at it as an opportunity, you're going to improve, and your business will improve, your clients will improve, everything will improve, as opposed to just looking at it as a negative. You always fail forward.
Yeah. One of my coaching, because I take coaching, have done so consistently for years now. It's been a key piece of my success. The mentor says we only have two outcomes. We have it's done or a lesson, right? You completed it or you learned, done or lesson. I love that.
Yeah. Like you just said, you talked about coaching. Coaching has been the single greatest thing for our business, and we didn't start it until October of 2018. I wish I had started it before we even started this business, because most attorneys that are out there, and even attorneys that may be listening to this podcast, we're trained in law school of how to think like an attorney. You don't even know how to actually be an attorney in law school. You have to learn that on the job. But you're never trained on business principles, how to run a business, how to know whether the business that you're working for is operating or running properly. So when you start thinking, not just I'm a law firm owner or I work for a law firm, but I either own or work for a business that just so happens to practice law, that changes everything, because now your perspective is focused on business and running your business based on objective metrics, key performance indicators, policies, procedures. You run a business. You don't run based on gut and feel and, I think this will work, or, I'm satisfied with this. No, it's what do the numbers show? And that's how all these other businesses run. So why shouldn't a law firm run the same way?
Preach, James. I mean, that's just so pivotal. And it doesn't, like, this is a podcast for attorneys, but you could say the same thing to dentists. You could say the same thing to doctors. You could say the same thing to HVAC. You could say the same thing to agencies. You could say the same thing to any business. Your business is incidental. Your deliverable is incidental to the business. The business you're really in is the marketing of your deliverable. That's your real business. That's what you're saying. And the management, of course, of the, that's so interesting. We're crossing that bridge still. It's a long bridge. And I just wrote an SOP this morning, which is designed to train managers and executives on how to write SOPs, right? So this is a totally different way of thinking. This is a seed SOP, which self-multiplies. So what else have you learned from coaching that changed your trajectory?
You've got to write everything down. So, I mean, kind of like you're talking about, if you don't have policies and procedures, no one knows what they're doing. You don't know what they're doing. It's just you're kind of hoping that people have the right experience to do the job. And one of the, quote unquote benefits, I'm going to call it, of, being exposed to the pandemic and COVID is everyone's on Zoom. Everyone's used to Zoom. So where not everybody is a reader, not everybody reads that way, but everyone can understand video. So if you're doing a task, pull up Zoom, click record, and narrate the task that you're doing. And right there, you've got a manual for how to do the task. Then you can take it and you can put it into YouTube and it'll give you a transcript. So now you've got a written transcript. Now you've got the video, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, you hand this to your staff and say, all right, this is exactly how you do the job. Then there's no questions because the screen share is there and everything's before you. Whereas before it's like, oh, hey, go do this task. Now it's like, well, I don't know if they know how. Now that you've given them everything, there's no issue. You know how much time it takes. You know whether they've completed it or not. Like everything is there. So the more you start to do that early and build those policies and procedures, then it makes scaling so much better as well. I mean, it's just, everything, if it's written down, it's great.
So you've just such a big point, and I'll try to summarize it before we get to your next part. I'm actually writing a book now on, I think it's a working title called Playing God, the Attorney's Ultimate Guide to Time Creation. We might change the playing God part. It's pretty heavy hitting, but the idea is that like you can't scale, like how do you grow beyond 24 hours a day? You can't. The only way that you do is by creating media, which acts as your sort of intermediary. Literally, a media means to be in between. It's the median. So when you write everything down, you've created media, which then instructs other people. You've scaled through media. I think it's such a critical point. I'm writing an entire book on it, and you're kind of nailing it right here as well. So I want to ask you something kind of present tense. What's your biggest frustration right now? You figured out the scaling part. You figured out the coaching part. You're a great trial attorney. You've got a good referral loop. And you guys are doing, you said 2.5 or 2.15 run rate this year?
2.5 is where we're there.
2.5 is where you sit right now. So in this phase as an attorney, what are your frustrations? Like, where do you find yourself? Where are the next sort of hurdles to clear or gaps to fill?
It's always within the scale. So it's learning and acquiring and maintaining the proper mindset, because the way we ran our first year $250,000 business was not the way we run a $500,000 business, was not the way we run $1 million business, and is not the way we're running a $2.5 million business. So every time you kind of, check off the next level, you're like, great, I'm here, but you never arrive. You never figure it out because you always want to be growing. There's two options. You're growing or you're decaying. And we've been mashing the gas since 2018 when we really started coaching, and we don't want to stop mashing the gas. So it's always you've got to just get to that next hurdle. Now, as the income increases and you get to those higher levels of 5 million, 10 million, the problems get a little bit easier, but they're still problems and they're different. So it's just that constant change and being able to deal with that and maintain that mindset while things get better.
Let me zoom in on some specifics. What are the big problems you've got? Because it is always changing, right? Like in that's the whole point, is like grow or decay, shrink or grow, one or the other. What are some problems that are unique to your phase right now that you guys are dealing with?
So one of the things we're doing right now is we're hiring a position that we call chief of staff. And that's kind of where it's almost taking Mark and I out of the business to have a specialist come in that can understand both of us and take both of our mindsets, put them together, and still run the firm based upon the way we would do it. Finding somebody for that position we're almost kind of looking for a unicorn, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's easier if it's just one person. Like I can find a person that matches with me. Mark can find a person that matches with him. Finding that person and training and having them actually take the role, that has been a little bit difficult for us because we are a partnership, and that's how it's worked for us.
So if it weren't a partnership, what you're discussing is finding someone to come in and take over as the operator, whatever you would give it different words, I suppose, so that you could be an absentee owner. Is that the goal? So you can step out of the business and have an actual enterprise?
I don't know if it's necessarily stepping out of the business, but it's the dichotomy of working in the business versus working on the business. Mark and I, we both enjoy certain aspects of the business. I still would like to try cases. Do I necessarily want to work every part of the case or sit in a 5-hour deposition? Probably not. That's probably not something that's high on my bucket list as we're scaling and growing, but I still want to be involved to some extent of that. And Mark's got his involvement. We're in different areas, but it's more of being able to focus on the things on the business, especially at the scale we're looking to grow at, whereas not being in the business.
I'm just exploring your thinking at this point. Why not get two people, one for you, one for Mark?
Because we still bring that dichotomy. So we want to have somebody that, meshes with both of us, because generally our perspectives are so different. And I think that's why our partnership has worked so much, because not every partnership works. A lot of partnerships, especially in the legal industry, they're a flash in the pan. They're going to last, a couple of years, 2 or 3 max. Whereas, we've been in 8 years and there's no issues, but that's a lot of times because I'm over here, Mark's over here, and we end up sometimes in the middle, most of the time in the middle. So with that, gives both of us, some consistency in different, areas to say, hey, we're leaning on each other in our strengths. So it's just finding that one person that kind of helps us see all that.
Yeah. That is.
But at the same time, I mean, I can't say I would be remiss if I didn't take advice from somebody. So, maybe we need to look at hiring too, if that's a different perspective and a different way and it gets the job done, why not?
I love that thinking, because that's so critical to growth. First of all, I'm not advising that. I'm just exploring your thinking. Secondly, that attitude is, I think, at least for me, one of the biggest personal transformations to let down the idea that I have all the ideas and to just put that on the side and to listen to everybody else's thoughts. And that's really the applied concept of the mastermind and Think and Grow Rich that Napoleon Hill discusses. You don't have to have a formal mastermind in all cases, but I will say probably all of my greatest insights and ideas have come from other people. And I have only one original idea that I know of, which is the creation of time through media. And even that is an adaptation of some other idea. So the fact that you're sitting here saying maybe there is another way, I think that's so smart. I think that's the most intelligent way to go about it. I don't know the best way to actually do that, but I know that mindset's correct.
Well, I mean, I call it entrepreneurial maturity. As you're becoming an entrepreneur, you have to be mature and understand that you don't have the greatest and best ideas. You may have a couple, but you got to leverage other people, and you need to hire people that are smarter than you.
So true and humbling, yet powerful, right? That's where the power is being open to that. That's so critical. What have you tried along the way that you didn't like? What are some things that you did? You're like, oh, definitely scratch that off the list. What are some trials that you've had?
Oh man, there's probably, we could probably do a podcast on that for several hours.
Big ones, just the big ones.
Some of the big ones, it's being too slow with hiring decisions, and especially the ones where as your business grows, your business changes. Kind of like I was talking about, the way you run that, $500,000 million, $2.5 million firm. Every time your firm is changing, and the people that you brought with you from that $500,000 firm to your $1 million firm, they may not be a fit anymore. And they may not be a fit at the next level. So it's learning to look out for those characteristics and making a change. And yes, it may start to seem and appear corporate or cutthroat. But when you really dig down and look at this, you're not helping a person who is really good at a $500,000 firm and trying to mold them into a role where they're not a good fit at $1 million or 2.5 million. You are actually hurting them when they may be better served in that role, because that's where they're good. That's where they thrive. So sometimes, as an entrepreneur, you have to make the decision, hey, I'm actually doing this for your benefit. The bus is going here. You're going to get off here and you're going to stay here. And that's okay. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not that you're a bad employee. It's just, you're not suited for this next stage. We're going to find something, that's better equipped for the bus that we're building, because, we're building this bus, one piece at a time as it goes down the track.
I assume then that you built a new bus and tried to keep the current passengers on and found some difficulty in that. What was that like?
I mean, it's tough because you build relationships with people. That's the way this works. Is you want to develop a culture. You want to have a firm and a business that stands for something. You want to have your company culture and maintain it, but that company culture also changes as well. And with that, a lot of times the staffing has to change. So somebody that may have been with you for 5 years is no longer suited for a position, or they may be suited for a position, but it's a demotion. And that's not fair. You don't want to demote somebody just because you grew the firm to a place where they're no longer qualified. So, sometimes we have to make the, adult decision to say, hey, this is not a fit for you right now. You're great for this area and we'll help you try to find something, but this is where we're going. And we just don't see there's any compatibility. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Got it. Yeah. If you demote somebody, they're going to quit anyway, and they'll quit before they quit. So they're just going to milk the payroll, and the performance suffers, and they quit. That's been my experience.
Yeah.
And then do you help them find another position? You're like, hey, look, but we've changed routes. Passengers are getting off here. But by the way, here's the other bus that'd be a great fit for you. You refer them to people. You do. Yeah. So you do the right thing in that case. So that is a challenge, man, because businesses are a series of relationships. And then, I mean, when the objective changes and the team doesn't fit anymore, that's got to be tough. But I mean, the objective has to be served. What do you love about your current business? What are the things that get you going today? Like, what's your favorite part right now?
Obviously, as your business grows, and with growth comes more revenue, and with revenue, more income, that's a good thing, because I started this business to provide for myself and my family. So I want that. And I think that's a desirable thing and an okay thing. But it's not really about the money, at least for me. Everybody's got different goals. As the way I see it, you've got 3 categories of goals. You've got your personal, your professional, and your financial goals. And you need to make sure that, from your personal standpoint, you're focusing on those, but your business helps you to acquire those 3 things. With me, it's really the personal side of things. I don't work near as much as I used to. Back in 2015, 16, 17, working 80, 90 hours a week was a thing. It's just what you did. And even today, I see a lot of attorneys that kind of wear that as a badge of honor. You see people posting on social media, oh, it's 11:45 at night and I'm still working on my client's case. That's not a badge of honor. That's not something to be proud of, in my opinion, because you should be home with your family. You should be home, figuring out what you want to do, because you shouldn't be a slave to your business. It's not saying that you shouldn't work hard for your clients and do a good job for them. But if you set the processes and people and procedures in place to allow the work to get done during the normal 40 hours, everyone's going to be better served, and you're going to be better equipped to move on. So like now, I've got this gym. When I get off this podcast, I'm going to be working out. I've got the ability to work out. I've got the ability to take time off. I've got the ability to be away from my business and know that it's working, and it's still just generating clients, generating revenue, because we've put the processes and people in place to help us succeed. So, being home with my family, that's huge. Not working myself to the bone, and having a business that works for me has allowed me to do a lot of things. So, I mean, that's the nice thing about right now.
Got it. I couldn't agree more. I think overworking is a symptom of a problem somewhere in the systems and processes of the business. And maybe we've all been there. And to get something off the ground, you probably do need to do 80, 90 hours a week at the beginning. My first couple of years, I read 100 books a year. I mean, I was working round the clock. But if it continues, and this will be a bodybuilding analogy that you might appreciate. So that's kind of like saying to somebody, oh yeah, you only work out 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's great. I work out 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And it's like, yeah, okay. But you've overtrained, your muscles are atrophying and you're injured. And when you get on stage, you're going to lose. So it's not about doing more work. It's about the intelligence of the work and the scalability of it. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's perspective as well. I mean, you don't want to look at your business as something to where you get your love and joy and satisfaction. Like, if you're using your business to get those things, you need to look somewhere else to get that. You need to get that from your family. You need to get that somewhere else, so you're not being a slave to your business.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure if I respectfully may not agree. I don't know how I feel about it, because and I might be wrong here, but my personal goal in the last couple of years has been to find joy in the work. And I learned that from Seinfeld. they were interviewing him and they were like, what happened? How did you guys have just year after year, 9 years, you guys were on fire? What happened? And Seinfeld was like, well, you want the truth? They're like, yeah. He was like, well, I fell in love with the work. I was like, man, wouldn't that be an amazing thing? So I don't know if that's the right goal or not. And obviously at some point he fell out of love with the work. So maybe that's to your point. But so as far as things you love, about your business, it sounds like it's lifestyle and being able to provide for your family. I do believe that businesses are there to serve the purpose of providing for families, giving a lifestyle, serving our community through our business in the meantime. Let's see what else. What would you change if you could right now? If you could wave a magic wand about your business, you say, hey, change this, snap your fingers, magic genie.
Probably go back to 2015 and be like, start coaching now. You know, if we had started that then and been able to mash the gas from the get-go with the right processes and people and things and mindset. I mean, having that from the beginning, I have a 4-year advantage probably at that point where, now I'm just catching up. So, that would probably be the single best thing, to go back in time and be like, start this now. How
many millions do you think that would have generated for you if you could really go back?
Who knows? The sky is the limit.
Yeah. So advice, well, actually, before I ask you that, any books that have really like changed your perspective, your paradigm, really been like breakthrough milestone books for you if you're a reader?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the biggest reader. Mark is by far my business partner. He's the reader. He loves it. I'm not as much of the reader, but big books, like right off the top of my head, The Gift of Fear, Think and Grow Rich. Like those are two great books. They're short books. They're short reads. You can read them, twice a year at least. And it just helps you again with the mindset, because that's the biggest thing that I see when I talk with other business owners and other attorneys as well is, it's really more about mindset. Once you fix and adjust and maintain your mindset, a lot of other things fall in place and take care of themselves. Whereas if you don't have the proper mindset, you may have the proper vision, but the method of achieving it and the direction is different.
So I have not heard of The Gift of Fear, but I get it. And I totally agree with the premise. I'll go read it. Part of the reason I asked that question is for me, selfishly. I like to find out what people's best books are. And Think and Grow Rich, I think, has been attributed as the number one, like the most credited book that more self-made millionaires say that they became millionaires from that book than any other book, second only to the Bible, is my understanding of it. And so I've read it 2 or 3 times and I keep finding new stuff from it. The Mastermind's the most popular application. People are applying it. They don't even know. A board of directors is a mastermind. They're not calling it a mastermind, but that's what it is. Business partnerships are masterminds. But even stuff like The Power of the Subconscious Mind, and all the there's some really great stuff. Is there a third book on your list that comes to mind?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, if I went upstairs, I could probably,
Okay.
I'm not the audiobook guy. Mark's the audiobook guy. I'm the, physical. I want to have it. So I've got the books like upstairs on the nightstand, and I don't remember titles as much, but The Gift of Fear and I Think and Grow Rich, those are books that are always out because I always just keep them around.
Advice you would give your former self besides coaching? Because I think we've got the coaching thing. What else would you say to yourself? Like, hey, James, do this now, shape up.
I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said a little earlier of speed. Don't think that it's got to be perfect. Take the risk, do it now, and don't always wait for it to be the right time, because it's never the right time. I mean, even if, taking an outside application, it's never the right time to have kids. You're never going to have enough in place and around you and, things that you need to have children. Just do it. You'll figure it out. Same thing with business. We don't use that mindset, but just do it. 80%. If it's a B average, it's great. Do it. No one's ever going to be perfect. And if you're striving for it, you're just going to fail or fall behind.
Yeah, totally agree. Anything else you'd like our listeners to hear? Would you like to hear from our listeners? If you want to, you can leave your contact information here on the podcast. If not, no big deal.
Yeah, no, I mean, what I like to say is, I talk with several business owners across the country, every week. So I have no problem talking with people about business problems, about legal problems. If you want to call me, if you want to text me, if you want to email me, I have no problems. I like it. I like talking with people. I like solving, business problems. I'm not a coach. I don't charge, but it's just something fun for me. And it's something I like to do. So, my direct line, 678-701-9023. That's how you can call me or text me. Or if you want to email me, jgrant@833forthewin.com. That's our toll-free number. So 833-4thewin.com. And, that's me. I'm always here.
Awesome.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, awesome. This has been amazing. James, thank you so much. To all of our listeners, be sure to subscribe and check in for the next episode, and hope you have an amazing day. See you guys.